Hello there. In this video, we are going to take a look at a new and exciting tool from the company Start9. Start9 provides a dedicated operating system for your home server applications. They provide a ton of cool features that you can use at your home labs. So without wasting any more time, let's get started. So let's start with what Start9 is and what it provides. Start9 claims to be a sovereign computing company. Now let's see whatever that means. Their main selling point is that with their tools, with their hardware, you take control of your own data. They tend to provide an alternative for your online services. You can replace the online services with your own dedicated server. They claim to make the servers very easy for everyone and not just tech savvy people. In addition to software services, they also provide dedicated hardwares that you can run as your own server. If you want, you can build your own server and you don't need to buy their hardware. You can just take their operating system provided by them and install it on your Raspberry Pi or any x86 machine. For example, if you go to their DIY website, you will see that they provide a complete documentation on how to set up their ISOs. Currently, they provide two dedicated ISOs for different architectures. One is for Raspberry Pi and the other one is for x86 machines. They claim to be very transparent and open source. The main proposition of StartOS is that you can just take their ISO and your server is up and running. You don't need to install any additional services. So they claim to replace the cloud computing because cloud is nothing but someone else's computer. So their idea is to just build your own cloud at your home. They follow a very open philosophy with being open about source code and everything else. So they claim to provide alternatives for different proprietary or paid web hosting services, which include PayPal, OneDrive, Google Drive, password managers like LastPass, etc. One thing that I've noticed in their proposition is that they tend to focus quite a lot on Bitcoins and cryptocurrency related stuff. You can run a complete node using their operating system. It's good if you are into that stuff, but for most home server application, it's not really needed. They provide quite an extensive documentation to build their services, or if you want some service that is not present in their app store, for example, they provide the documentation to basically build it yourself. So let's take a look at what their main offerings are. As I already mentioned, they provide dedicated hardware if you want to buy it from them, but you can just use their ISO as well. So they provide three main models for their servers: Server Lite, which is around 219 USD, Server 1, and Server Pure. I guess it depends on their characteristics and their resources. There's a bunch of merchandise which we are not really interested in. So let's take a look at Server Lite. So it provides 128 GB of storage, and let's take a look at the specs. So it's an ARM based CPU, which is not really the fastest, but it's also power efficient. The memory is 8 GB LPDDR, which seems to be okayish for this model. The storage is SD card, which is not really something you would want to use for your important data. So it's like kind of an alternative for Raspberry Pi or other single board computers. So the rest of the stuff is pretty standard. You have gigabit networking. Let's take a look at the other versions. So the server one is supposed to be much more powerful. So it has an option of using NVMe, which is a very solid option. The CPU is an Intel Celeron N4505, which is a decent CPU but not too powerful. And it's only just 2 threads, so it's not the most powerful PCs out there. The memory is 16 GB NVMe, that's the SSD or the storage. There is nothing really special in networking or graphics or the dedicated Intel graphics, which is pretty standard on most systems like this. And the third option, server pair, it provides Intel i7 10th Gen CPU, which is quite fast, but it only has 4 cores and 8 threads. For server applications, you don't need to have a very powerful PC. You can work with the very older or decent CPU. But for if you look at the price point, it seems to be quite expensive for this 10th gen CPU. It's not the fastest one out there. The graphics are also decent, but not too great. The rest of the stuff is pretty standard, I guess. Let's take a look at their documentation and see what are the options here. So you have a user manual here, a couple of guides, support, developer docs, and contact. So we are not really interested in that, but DIY, this seems interesting. You can build your own server. Let's see how we can do that. So this is that you can work with Raspberry Pi or x86 computers. That's fine. They do provide ARM builds for other computers, but it's not really stable at the moment. So let's take a look at x86 machines. So it could be run on any x86 hardware, blah blah blah. That seems okay. So there's a couple of minimum requirements, which is okay for the most of the modern CPUs or modern systems rather. So they do provide documentation to flash their ISO as well. So you have to go to GitHub, I guess, to download their ISO. They provide documentation for both Linux, Windows, and Mac. How to install it? So you need to download the third-party tool to basically make a bootable USB. Once you do that, you can flash and insert it into the device where you want to install your operating system. Let's go next. So it's if you have done some kind of installation of Linux, for example, this procedure should be fairly standard and there shouldn't be something surprising. So let's see what Start9 has to offer. So when you install it for the first time, we're presented with two options. Either you can start fresh or you can recover from an existing install. Since we don't have an existing install, we will just go with the fresh install option. You can select which disks you want to install on. So I will select this one. You can enter a random password and click finish and it will install. It should take some time. Once the setup is complete, you will see this option. It says download permanent address info. It will no longer work. Let's see what it is. We can download. No, let's just log in. So we enter your password. Okay. So you're presented with a very simple interface. You have marketplace. There you can set your CA certificates or create a backup if you want. There's some server info, which is basically a web address to access it remotely if you want to access the server through Tor network. You can use it locally with this IP address or with this IPv6. Let's go to the marketplace. So you have a couple of template applications that you can use. This is, I guess, for Bitcoin. You have Vault Warden, which is a very good password manager. I use it all the time, but I use the official version from Bitwarden rather than this one. But it's the same thing if you want to use it. There is no difference. You have Bitcoin, you have Nextcloud. So if you don't know Nextcloud, it's like an alternative for Google. You have various different services that you can use. For example, you can use it as a drive, as a calendar, as a photo storage medium, whatever you want. It's a huge piece of software and it offers tons of different services that you can use. Let's see communication. You can host your blogs using Ghost, for example. There is some media related options. For example, Jellyfin is a very good media streaming platform. You can run your media files from this and access it from anywhere in your local network, for example. You have SearXNG, which is like a meta search engine. It aggregates results from various search engines and presents it in just one window. So you get the best of all search engines. There is some AI related stuff, which is a chatbot for ChatGPT. We are not really interested in this one. Lightning Network, I don't really know what it is. So there is not a lot of applications here, just a couple of pre-built ones. But since Start 9 operating system is in very early stages, we expect more and more services to come online. In the system menu, you have options. It displays a warning for HTTP, but since I'm using it locally, it's not an issue. You can SSH into your server as well. So it's pretty standard. There is nothing special here. Let's see how we can create a backup. So you define a folder where you want to create the backup, or even you can select the drives that you want to use. So all in all, it's a very interesting project and it seems very promising. But at the moment, since there is not a lot of services, it's very barely usable. But I hope in future they improve their offerings. So let's stop right there, and in the next video, we will focus on some other interesting projects. So till then, see you later. Bye.